My name's Daniel. I'm 31 now, but I've spent most of my life out in the woods. I'm a field ecologist, which means my office is usually a tree line, a creek bed, or a ridge instead of a desk. The outdoors has always been where I felt most at home. I've worked across the Southeast, but the Blue Ridge Mountains in Virginia have always pulled me back. In the spring of 2023, I had a rhythm down. Every couple of weeks, I'd disappear for 3 or 4 days to hike sections of the Appalachian Trail. No deadlines, no inbox, just my boots ticking off the miles and the sound of my own breath. Trail registers are one of my favorite parts of long hikes. They're old-fashioned, just notebooks, tucked in weatherproof boxes nailed to posts or shelters. You jot your name, the date, maybe your destination, a mix of safety measure and ritual. For someone like me who hikes solo, seeing other names scribbled on a page is grounding, proof that you're not entirely alone out there. It was early March, the kind of cold that bites harder in the mornings. The ground was still frozen, so every step crunched sharp in the silence. I started near Rockfish Gap, planning to loop a few side trails before heading northbound on the AT. The first day was quiet in the best way. Birds cutting through the silence, a hawk circling above, the smell of pine thick in the cool air. I signed my name in the register at a small lean-to near Humpback Rocks, ate a protein bar, and stretched under a sky that bruised purple as evening set in. The second day is when I saw her. She couldn't have been more than 18, maybe 19. Hoodie pulled tight over her head despite the sun, jeans soaked at the cuffs with dew, and nothing else. No pack, no bottle, no gear, just standing at the fork of the trail, shifting her weight like she wasn't sure which way was down. I slowed. Hikers usually swap a word or two. Even if it's just a nod, it breaks the monotony. "Hey, you doing all right?" I asked. She looked up slowly. Her expression didn't match the situation. She wasn't tired. She wasn't lost. She was calm. Too calm. Her eyes were wide, darker than they should have been, like they didn't catch the light right. "I'm walking to find someone," she said. Her voice was soft, not weak, not scared, just soft, like she was explaining something obvious. "You need water?" "Food?" I asked. "You'll want both if you're covering ground out here." She shook her head once. "I'm fine." I waited, expecting her to explain who she was looking for, where she came from, but she didn't. Just stood there with her hands shoved in her hoodie pocket, eyes skimming past me, like she was already seeing someone else farther up the trail. "There's a line you don't cross out here. You offer help, but you don't press. Everyone's got their own reasons, their own rhythm." So I nodded, adjusted my pack, and said, "Safe hiking." She gave me this faint little smile. Not a thank you, not a goodbye. Just a curve of her lips that felt out of place in the silence. I walked on, but the rest of the day I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting her to appear behind me. At each register, I checked the names, but there was no trace of her, only mine and a few scrawled from people much farther ahead. That night, I set up camp near a ridge that overlooked a cove. The wind moved low through the branches, carrying that damp earth smell. I should have been relaxed, but all I could think about was the girl with no pack, no food, no gear, smiling like she didn't need any of it. I've always loved the trail, loved the quiet it carves into your mind, the rhythm of waking up, walking, eating what you can carry, then doing it all again. But sometimes the things that stay with you aren't the peaks or the sunsets. They're the moments when silence turns into something else. By the third day of my hike that spring, I couldn't shake her. The girl I'd seen on the trail, no gear, no food, no water, just standing at a fork in the woods like she'd been dropped there. I'd passed plenty of odd hikers before. Flip-flop, wearing day trippers, exhausted through hikers with 1,000-yard stares. but never someone out there with absolutely nothing, not even a name in the register. It gnawed at me, even after I made it back into town. At the ranger station, I mentioned it, almost casually, like small talk. "Hey, saw a young girl up near Bluff Mountain. Hoodie pulled tight, no pack. Anyone else report her?" The ranger was in his 50s, with a face that looked carved from the same wood his desk was made of. He gave me a long look before asking, "How young we talking?" "College age, maybe younger. Dark hair. Said she was looking for someone." He leaned back, arms folding across his chest. "Nobody like that signed in." I already knew that, but hearing it out loud twisted something in my gut. "Not in the register either?" He shook his head slowly. "And funny you bring it up. You're not the first to mention her." The room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "What do you mean?" "Every couple years," he said, voice flat, "someone says they run into her. Hoodie, no pack, same story, always in that stretch of trail. But when we check, no record, no one matches." He must have read the shift in my face, because he added quickly, "Could be hikers misremembering. Could just be stories that spread." But he didn't sound like he believed it. I drove home with her image stuck in my head. Too calm, eyes too dark, smile too faint. She hadn't left her name in the register, and out there, that's as close as it gets to leaving proof you exist. Seeing her without it made her feel untethered. After that, I started signing my own name more carefully. Full name, time, direction, sometimes even a note. Blue jacket, heading north. It wasn't about being polite, it was about proof. Proof that I was real, that I passed through. And yet, the longer I thought about her, the more I started to feel like maybe she didn't need to. The Appalachian Trail has a way of magnifying things. The smallest kindness, someone leaving a jug of water at a road crossing, a stranger offering a candy bar, becomes something sacred. Hikers call them trail angels. 99 times out of 100, that's what they are. Ordinary people, trying to make your journey lighter. It's the other 1% you remember. I was a month into a through hike, starting from Georgia and aiming for Maine if my budget and knees held up. By April, I was past Damascus, Virginia, Trailtown, USA. Spring had finally arrived. Crisp mornings, warm afternoons that left sweat darkening your pack straps. That morning I'd broken camp near a hidden creek, far enough from the shelter crowd that the night had been quiet. No guitars, no drunken singing. Just water moving over stone. Perfect. By mid-morning, I heard the hum of traffic, sign of a road crossing ahead. My stomach perked up. Road crossings often meant coolers, or if you were lucky, trail magic. And sure enough, there it was. A car parked in the gravel pull-off. Trunk popped. A folding table laid out with bananas, chips, gallon jugs of water, and a cooler dripping condensation. A man leaned against the bumper, sunglasses low, cap pulled tight, smiling like he'd been waiting. "Trail magic," he called. "Come grab a snack." His voice was casual, warm, the kind of voice meant to put you at ease. I slowed, scanning. One man, mid-40s, alone, both hands visible. Table set wide enough I wouldn't have to squeeze past him. No second car, no obvious red flags. I stepped closer, wiped sweat from my forehead. "Appreciate it." "Name's Tom," he said. Then without pause, "Hannah, right? You look like you could use a cold drink." I froze, just long enough for it to matter. He'd used my real name, not my trail name, Sparrow, the only one other hikers knew me by. My real name, the one I hadn't said out loud since I left Springer Mountain. I forced a laugh, tapping the Sharpie letters on my water bottle. Trail name's Sparrow. Doesn't fit, he said easily. Hannah suits you better. He reached into the cooler, pulled out a bottle of orange Gatorade, beads of condensation running down the sides. He held it out like it was a gift he'd picked just for me. I took it, because refusing would have made the air heavier. He slid a bag of chips across the table. "How was your camp by the creek last night?" he asked. The Gatorade nearly slipped from my hand. That creek site wasn't marked. It wasn't in the guidebook or on any hiker apps. I hadn't posted about it. The only place that information existed was in my head and on my GPS tracker. "You hike around here a lot?" I asked, forcing calm. He smiled, a twitch at the corner of his mouth. "I keep an eye on hikers. Girls especially. It's not always safe out here. Saw your ping last night. Figured that was a good spot." Ping. The word punched through me. My tracker, clipped to my shoulder strap, sent pings to a satellite. I'd set it up back in Georgia with my mom on FaceTime. Never thought about the default settings. Never thought about the share option. Apparently mine had been public. I covered it with a swallow of Gatorade, trying not to choke. "You a former through hiker?" "Do a lot of shuttles," he said smoothly. "Resupply runs. Safer when you've got someone local driving you around. I can slack pack you, carry your bag, meet you up trail. Plenty of women take me up on it." He grinned like it was already settled. Inside, my nerves scraped raw. I smiled instead. "I'm good today." Got my rhythm. He didn't argue. Just watched as I walked to the far edge of the lot. Pretended to adjust my pack. Pulled out my tracker with shaky fingers. Profile, public. Followers, 41. My stomach dropped. I toggled it, private. Changed my username. Killed all share links. Restarted the device, just to be sure. When I looked up, he was still watching me. Behind the sunglasses, unreadable. I forced a cheerful wave. "Thanks for the trail magic." Then I turned and walked back into the woods. Every step after that felt wired with tension. I didn't run. Running invites chase. But I walked hard, boots striking in time with my heartbeat. Every car sound from the road sent heat up my spine. Late afternoon, I reached another crossing. Gravel, then asphalt. And there he was again. Same car, same smile. "Hey, Hannah," he called, like we were old friends. "Change your mind about that ride?" My throat tightened. "There's a group right behind me. We're heading for the shelter." His smile thinned. "You don't have to be stubborn. You're moving about 2.3 miles an hour. That'll put you at Laurel Creek by 6. I'll meet you there. Bring pizza." He knew my pace. He'd memorized my track. "Good to know," I said lightly, and walked back into the trees before he could say more. That night at the shelter, I cooked dinner with shaking hands. Other hikers traded jokes, strummed guitars. I barely heard them. At one point, a car idled just out of sight before rolling away. Nobody spoke about it. Nobody wanted to. I signed the register before bed. Sparrow 414, pushing north. I didn't mention him. Putting his name in ink would have made it permanent. Sleep came in fits. Every branch crack sounded like footsteps. Every dream was a car trunk slamming shut. In Damascus, I went straight to the outfitter, bought blister tape I didn't need. At the counter, I asked if people ever got tracked through GPS apps. The clerk didn't blink. "Happens more than you'd think. Defaults are public. Mostly women forget to toggle private." I told her the short version. She slid me the ranger's non-emergency number on a scrap of paper. "Call and tell your family. Word travels." I did both. 2 days later, I passed another cooler, took a Coke, wiped the rim, sat on a log. A truck rolled past, too slow, then too fast. And I thought about Tom, if that was even his name. Thought about the way he said Hannah, like he owned it. That's what stuck. Not his car, not his smile, not even his words, just the way my own name felt in his mouth, like a key, like he'd already unlocked the door, all because of one toggle, one door I hadn't realized I'd left open. Now, I check every morning. I check my tracker, my locks, my feeds. Every road crossing, I look both ways, not just for cars, but for who's waiting. Because sometimes the scariest thing isn't what you see in the woods, it's what finds you there. The Roan Highlands in North Carolina have always felt like stepping into another world. Most people know the area for its sweeping balds, the kind of rolling hills that look endless in photographs, and the low clouds that swallow the horizon. But for me, it's the silence that makes the place unforgettable. Wide, empty stretches where you can hear your own heartbeat. It was May 2022 when I learned that silence doesn't always mean safety. I'd taken a long weekend off work and headed out with two of my closest friends, Jenna and Luke. We weren't hardcore thru hikers by any stretch, but we'd all logged enough nights in the woods to feel comfortable. The plan was simple: 3 days, 2 nights, find a good campsite, maybe catch a sunrise or two, and disconnect from the buzzing world we lived in. That first day was close to perfect. Blue skies, a steady breeze, wildflowers dotting the ridges like confetti. Jenna kept pulling us to the side, making us pose in front of every twisted tree and patch of blooms like we were building our own postcard collection. Luke cracked jokes about kidnapping a wild pony if we found one, swearing he'd ride it back to Raleigh. Me, I was just soaking it all in, happy to be somewhere the only notifications came from birds overhead. By late afternoon, we'd found a campsite tucked a little ways off the trail. It wasn't official, but it was flat, near a trickling stream, and opened onto a view of layered ridges fading into the dusk. We cooked ramen on our stoves, passed around cheap boxed wine, and swapped dumb stories from college until the fire burned low. For a while, it felt like every camping trip should feel safe, light, ordinary. That illusion didn't last. Around 10 p.m., tucked into my tent and half asleep, I heard footsteps. Not the scurry of a raccoon or the uneven crunch of a deer. These were different, steady, measured, human. 2 or 3 steps, a pause, then again. At first I told myself it was another late hiker passing through. The trail never really closes, but the sound stopped just beyond the dark edge of our campfire. Too close to be casual, too deliberate to be accidental. "Did you guys hear that?" I whispered. "Probably a deer," Luke muttered, already half gone to sleep. But Jenna sat up. "That didn't sound like an animal." Silence followed, the kind of silence that presses against your eardrums. After a long minute, the steps didn't return. We eventually drifted back into uneasy sleep, writing it off as nothing. The next morning, in the sunlight, it all felt silly to even mention. We joked about our invisible ghost hiker and pushed on. By the second night, we'd nearly forgotten about it. We set up deeper in the woods this time, away from the open ridges. Dinner, fire, laughter. It felt routine again, but sure enough, around the same time as before, the footsteps came back. This time, all 3 of us heard them. "Hello," Jenna called out, her voice thin. "Is someone out there?" No answer, just the sharp snap of a branch breaking, then silence again. Luke stood abruptly. "I'm checking it out." We both tried to stop him, but he was already grabbing his flashlight. He swept the beam between the trees as he walked off the trail. Jenna and I stayed rooted near the fire, hearts pounding. Minutes passed before he called back, voice tight. "You guys, come here. You need to see this." We rushed over. Luke was crouched near a tree, pointing at something half-hidden beneath a layer of dead leaves. At first, I thought it was trash. Then the flashlight beam hit glass. A phone. An iPhone. face up, still recording. The red timer ticked past 2 hours. Luke lifted it carefully, like it might burn him. Someone hid it here. The battery was still half full. The camera had been angled directly at the trail. He stopped the recording and with trembling fingers swiped through the gallery. The first clips were short, shaky, just a few seconds each. Hikers in daylight, walking past, completely unaware. Families, couples, solo hikers, every one of them captured from the shadows. Then we found the one that made my stomach clench. It was us, laughing about wildflowers, walking that very trail, recorded from the side of the path, like someone had crouched just out of sight, camera in hand. "That was yesterday," Jenna whispered. Her face looked drained in the flashlight's glow. Suddenly, the woods felt wrong. Every tree seemed to hold eyes. Every rustle was a step closer. We carried the phone back to camp, but none of us touched the wine that night. No jokes, no comfort. We kept the fire low and sat with our backs to it, knives and trekking poles at the ready. Around 3 a.m., a beam of light flickered through the trees. It wasn't a hiker's headlamp. It was too low, sweeping side to side, searching. We killed our fire instantly, sat frozen, breath locked in our throats, as the beam moved across the ridge, slow and deliberate, before finally fading into the dark. I don't think any of us slept a single minute after that. At first light, we packed faster than we ever had in our lives. We hiked until our legs shook, straight into town, and went directly to the ranger station. We handed over the phone, recounted every detail. The officer on duty bagged it up like evidence, nodding along with our story. "We'll send it to tech," he said flatly. "Might be hard without consent." "Consent?" I snapped. "We didn't consent to being filmed." He gave a tired shrug. "People record on trails all the time, usually harmless, but we'll check." Weeks passed. None of us heard anything. Maybe the phone was locked. Maybe it was untraceable. Maybe it was never even investigated. But the images haven't left me. Those clips of strangers, of us, collected like trophies. Someone had gone to the effort of hiding a phone under leaves, letting it run for hours, then coming back to retrieve it. And if they'd done it once, what were the chances that was the only time? Sometimes I lie awake wondering if our faces, our laughter, are sitting on some hard drive right now. If we're filed away in a folder labeled trail, just pieces of someone's private obsession. The woods used to feel like freedom to me. Now, they feel less empty, like every tree might be hiding a lens, like every crunch of footsteps behind me isn't another hiker, it's someone watching. You know what scares me most? If Luke hadn't checked the woods that night, if his flashlight hadn't caught the glint of glass, we never would have known. We'd still be out there smiling for pictures, blissfully unaware that someone had been watching the whole time. I've worked in the outdoor gear business for nearly a decade. Boots, tents, stoves, filters, you name it. I've probably pitched it, tested it, or sold it. The job means living in the same world my customers dream about. Trail towns, campgrounds, back roads. Over the years, I've answered the same questions 100 times. Do these boots grip on wet rock? Will this stove handle the wind? Is it dumb to backpack alone? That last one always makes me pause. The real answer? No, it's not dumb. But I always give people a double answer. Hike solo if you want. But if a stranger ever asks if you're alone, the answer is no. Always no. Because in the woods, honesty isn't always safe. A couple springs ago, I'd wrapped up a long weekend gear event in Hot Springs, North Carolina. I wanted to reward myself before the next haul, so I decided to camp at Mac's Patch. If you've never been, it's one of those grassy balds where the mountains roll forever in blue waves. Open skies, endless stars. Families picnic there. Hikers set up camp. It feels safe, like a postcard version of the wilderness. That evening, I pulled into the gravel lot, packed light, and started up the short trail. Halfway up, I stopped to catch the view. That's when I saw him. He looked off, not dirty, not rugged like a hiker who'd logged miles. His sneakers were spotless, camera slung across his chest, standing still, almost like he was waiting. "Hey there," he called out casually. "You hiking alone?" Reflex kicked in. "My boyfriend's right behind me," I said, flat as stone, like I'd rehearsed it. He studied me. "Camping up top?" "Just here for the sunset," I muttered, already moving. At the summit, I pitched my tent near the tree line, the door angled toward the trail. My routine is muscle memory now. Stakes down tight, fly taut, keys by the zipper, panic button ready. Whistle clipped where my hand can find it in the dark. Bear spray in reach. If safety is a religion, this is my prayer. The man wandered the bald as the light dipped, camera swinging. He took shots of the horizon, but every so often, the lens swept across me. Never aimed, never obvious, but always grazing like a lighthouse beam. Later, he passed close. "Good night for stars," he said. "Looks that way." "You said your boyfriend was right behind you." His tone was mild, but the way he phrased it felt like he was fact-checking me. "Stop to take photos," I lied without blinking. He nodded, accepting my story, like a box checked. Sunset painted the bald gold, and a group clapped like they were watching fireworks. By nightfall, most families hiked down. By 10, only a few scattered tents glowed in the grass. I zipped mine tight. Headlamp on one side, whistle on the other. A trekking pole wedged in the zipper to catch if someone tugged. Sleep came in fragments, drifting in and out, nerves stretched tight. Sometime after midnight, I heard footsteps, not animal, human, careful, slow. They traced a circle around my tent. "Hey babe," I called out loud enough to carry. "That you?" Silence. The steps paused, then shifted, pacing from the head of my tent to the foot. A fingertip brushed the nylon, soft enough to bow it inward. Then came the sound, metal against metal. The zipper pull tapped gently, as if someone was saying hello with a single finger. And then, inches from my ear, a whisper slid through the mesh. "You lied." Not angry, not playful, just certain, like a debt collector naming what I owed. My hand pressed the panic button on my keys. I didn't press. Sometimes silence is stronger. The steps lingered, circled again, hesitated. Finally, they receded into the wind. At dawn, I unzipped. A ring of footprints darkened the dew, circling my tent, overlapping heavy at the vestibule, deeper prints than my own. I packed quick and headed down. Near the trees, a red-haired woman zipped her own tent, waved good morning. I almost asked if she'd heard footsteps in the night, but stopped myself. At my car, I locked the doors before sitting. I typed a report into my phone to send when I hit service. Male circling tents at max patch, whispered at mine, camera, footprints. When the signal returned, I called the non-emergency line. The dispatcher didn't scold, didn't dismiss, just logged it. I still hike solo, but I don't camp on balds anymore. I want another tent door within shouting distance now. That was the first half of the story, but it wasn't the only strange thing that happened that season. A month later, while demoing water filters in Johnson City, a man with a camera rig approached my booth. Same clean shoes, same swinging strap. He asked about cartridges, nodded, and left. Maybe just a customer, maybe more. I'll never know. And the thing is, I do lie. I'll keep lying. Not because I'm ashamed of being alone, but because survival sometimes means inventing company out of thin air. But here's the part I almost never tell. That fall, I took another trip up the ridges of Southwest Virginia. Not Mac's Patch this time. Somewhere quieter. I thought I'd put the man behind me. But the mountains, they have a way of holding things. October had sharpened the air. Leaves cracked like glass underfoot. The sky washed a hard blue. I hiked up with an old borrowed pack, more soot than stove in my kit. My plan was simple. Climb a ridge, camp by a spring, head down the next day. By dusk, I reached a knob where the ridge opened wide. The view stretched in smoky blue layers to the horizon. Wind shoved at my jacket. I boiled ramen, stirred peanut butter into it like it was fine dining, and sat watching the sun drain away. That's when I saw the lights. 3 at first. Soft, golden glows floating across the opposite ridge. Too steady for fire, too quiet for drones, too warm for headlamps. They hovered, slow arcs against the wind. I told myself they were lanterns, hikers, maybe a family night walking. But they moved in formation. They cared about spacing, geometry. One shifted higher, the others following like they were tethered. I should have ignored it, but curiosity dragged me closer. A spur trail led out to a clearing. From there, I counted 4 lights. They hovered with intent, like sentinels. "Anyone out there?" I shouted, but the wind swallowed my voice. One light drifted toward me, straight, silent, unwavering. My body decided before my mind did. I ran. Branches snapped under my boots, breath tearing cold in my chest. When I risked a glance back, the light had crossed half the gap. I dove into my tent, yanked the zipper closed, and killed my headlamp. The glow seeped through the seams. A faint haze brushed across the ground beneath the vestibule. Once, I swore I felt heat on my cheek, like a screen pressed too close. And then, just as sudden, it faded. The ridge returned to darkness. At dawn, the only trace left was my own frantic prints. At the trailhead, an old man sipping coffee told me what locals called them, the Watchers. I laugh now, pretend I saw drones or lanterns tied to fishing line. Pretend it was nothing but tired eyes inventing patterns. But deep down, I know better. Because sometimes the mountain watches back.